He's a motherfucker. There's no other way you can say it. He's a piece of shit. Like we did a nitro in Buffalo. I knew who I had to wrestle, per se, but 10 minutes before the shows go on air, 10 to 8, I didn't know if it was going to happen or not. We had to wait till Hogan got to the building and say, clear it. Yeah, you can do what they have written down.
So you're still not good with Hogan to this day?
And then, of course, the one time, he tried to put me in jail.
Scott Steiner talks about his beef with Hulk Hogan. Check out what he had to say, and then I'll come back with my comments.
Setbacks, people keep you down, politics, you get pissed off. So at that point, when I turned Big Papa Pump, I was very pissed off. And people could kind of tell that in my interviews, because I was tired of the bullshit of professional wrestling. Things that happen behind closed doors, you don't really know what's going on. Luckily, I had some guys in the back doors that told me what was going on most of the time, but a lot of times I didn't know, like that was a real thing back then. The older guys keeping the younger guys down, like when I said that I got beat my first, match after turning heel, the call was made by Hulk Hogan to have me get beat.
Yeah, a lot of politics back in the day with wrestling. The older guys, they wanted to keep the young dudes out the way. They wanted to try to get as much money as possible, because if the young guys are getting a lot of money, that's going to take away from their pot, from them getting, a lot of money. So even though it was probably a couple $100,000 per concert back then, every dollar counted. So I can see Hulk Hogan, making that call like, hey, I'm not losing this match. Go ahead and, let's make him lose the match. So I can see it happening. Don't know for sure, but Hulk Hogan had a lot of power in wrestling, so he can call a lot of shots.
So and the only reason I knew that, because I knew somebody that was in the vicinity of talking to him. So,
damn.
Which kind of pissed me off, but you can overcome wins and losses. It's all, people can see your personality and what you do on camera. Wins and losses, you can overcome them. But for another wrestler to tell when another wrestler decides he's going to decide who wins is both.
Yeah, and again, when wrestlers can call shots on the next wrestler, and especially a Hulk Hogan, your progress is going to be hindered. You may not reach the heights that you could reach if you didn't have the politics going on behind the scenes. So even though Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump, had a huge run, he was really known as the bad guy. He never got like that, that baby face run that a lot of wrestlers had, like the John Cena's, The Rock, even the Hulk Hogan's. If he could have had a run like that, who knows, maybe Scott Steiner, he's still around in wrestling as far as the WWE. But with Hulk Hogan allegedly calling the shots, playing the politics on Scott Steiner, it definitely messed him up. And he has the right to, have that beef with Hogan, even though this interview looks like it was a few months before the passing of Hulk. I'm sure he's still standing on business and feels this way about Hulk Hogan.
I think he did that.
He's a motherfucker. There's no other way you can say it. He's a piece of shit. Like we did a nitro in Buffalo, and I knew who I had to wrestle, per se, but 10 minutes before the shows go on air, 10 to 8, I didn't know if it was going to happen or not. We had to wait till Hogan got to the building and say, clear it. Yeah, you can do what they have written down. So it was like,
that's messed up.
Just shit like that.
So you're still not good with Hogan to this day?
I mean, what am I going to do now? It's like, but I don't forget. There's a reason why he got booed in California. All this stuff that came out with him, racist comments. Now you would never found that out if it wasn't recorded behind, closed doors. So I think a lot of people realize, the perception that the WWE or WCW wanted of Hulk Hogan was not really him. The racist comment, and, Hogan and Savage, when I was good friends of Savage. So I knew all the stories, and he used to tell me all the stuff. And it was just, and then of course the one time, he tried to put me in jail.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan, he got a lot of, negative backlash on his name with the comments that he made in that leaked video. A lot of people calling him out with Hulk playing politics on Scott Steiner basically him making the shots, seeing if he's going to win or lose a match. That's why Scott Steiner, even though, it's nothing he say he can do now, it is what it is, but he's not going to forget all the BS that, Hulk Hogan allegedly put him through. So even though the WWE, WWF at the time, WCW tried to make Hulk Hogan, seem like the wrestling darling, the media darling, everything is Hulkamania, NWO, everything's perfect. It looks like Hulk Hogan was causing a lot of controversies behind the scenes.
So, I was facing serious time. I could have been, in jail for, 15 years.
For what?
Well, I found out the bullshit he was doing in TNA. So it was, when I left, I told a couple of, let it be known, like, next time I see him, I'll slap the shit out of him. But I didn't see him for like a year. And then I had met his wife backstage. But when I threw this, it was in San Jose for the WrestleMania. And there was this platinum blonde that was looking at me. And I kind of thought, oh, there's a stripper, But finally, I kind of remember meeting. But I still wasn't sure. So I went up to her and said, "Are you Hulk Hogan's wife?" And she said, "Yeah." And at that point, he was going to introduce Savage into Hall of Fame, which was bull. So I told her that, and I told her, he was a piece of shit for that whole situation, and I was going to slap the shit out of him. Well, she had I said that, and I grabbed it was nobody heard me. It was very low key. I didn't raise my voice or anything. Grabbed my bags and left. Well, she called Hogan. He came to the airport, and then he called the San Jose Police Department to say I slapped her, and I threatened to kill him.
Yeah, that's wrong. Basically a false police report. Yeah, for them to, file an alleged, false report on Scott Steiner. Basically, Scott was telling the wife, like, look, I got an issue with Hulk Hogan. I want to slap him or whatever the case may be. But for Hulk Hogan to twist it around and be like, oh, he slapped my wife, that's where, the beef is probably at an all-time high right now. He wanted to see Hulk Hogan on some man-to-man stuff. Like, if I run into him, just let him know, it ain't going to be pretty. It's going to be a real issue. But to be spun around like that, you can see that even though Scott Steiner is basically saying, we got to move on, but I won't forget, he still has some issues with Hulk. And again, I think it's the same. Even if this interview was, weeks and months after the passing of Hogan, I think he's still keeping that same energy with Hulk Hogan. He got a real issue with him.
Well, it's terroristic threats and aggravated assault. So I got a call from San Jose Police Department. It was on TMZ and stuff. And luckily it happened at the airport because there were so many cameras. Otherwise it would have been her and him against me.
Right. So
it would have been, a tough case in court. But since it was on camera, I told you, don't bother me anymore. It's on camera. And they stopped. So.
Was it difficult in WCW to work with Hogan? If you guys didn't?
No, because I didn't really know how bad he was. It's still like what happens behind closed doors, you don't really find out till maybe a year later or 2 years later. And that situation's gone. So you're kind of like that slide. So no, but don't get me wrong. See, when I grew up, I wasn't a wrestling fan because for the simple fact we didn't have, we had 3 channels where I was born, Bay City. And it's like, so it wasn't a big thing, but it got big when I was in college. That's when it blew up when Hogan did the Rocky thing. And then of course, Macho Man, Big John Studd, Ted DiBiase, all the big names.
Yeah.
So, that's when I became a big fan. I was a big fan with my buddies and stuff. Matter of fact, when I first started wrestling, I'm wrestling in the Ypsilanti Armory. But then I went to the WrestleMania in Detroit where it was 100, not 100, but I think it was like actually 70,000. Well, it was amazing.
93,000, they said.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But, that was, we're in the Silver Dome. Yep. It was crazy. So you can imagine me wrestling at the Ypsilanti Armory.
Yeah.
And like next weekend I'm at the Silver Dome watching that.
Yeah.
It was a spectacle. It was amazing. I was sitting way up in the nosebleed sections, but
Yeah, fortunately, he got those charges dropped and it happened in a public setting. So they were able to kind of dispute, the whole situation with him and Hulk Hogan's previous wife. But just as far as working, with someone that you idolize, you don't really know what it is until you're in the same space with them. So Scott, he was fortunate to be in WCW to work around Hulk Hogan. So he was able to see the politics, play out in real time. So again, I got no issues with Scott Steiner's beef with Hulk Hogan. Even if he feels the same way after his passing, it is what it is. He had close interactions with Hulk, so he was able to see the behind the scenes stuff. We just know Hulk Hogan, as the superhero in wrestling. But with all these reports coming out on Hulk Hogan, the leak tape, the comments that he made, you can't blame people for feeling a certain way about Hulk Hogan.